My name is Monica McCarthy. I'm a program specialist at the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs Section 811 Project Rental Assistance Program. Many of you know me because I manage the waiting list for our 140 plus properties. I work with properties as they're in their lease up to send them applicants off the waiting list, and very much try to support our properties in becoming familiar and trained on our program, and likewise you all, the referral agents.
And I am Caitlyn Devlin. I'm the program liaison for Section 811. I'm the newest addition to the 811 team. I was brought on to, of course, do a variety of tasks. I process the applications that you guys send us, and then you may have received an email from me before, doing updates to applications, but also I was also brought on to create resources for our applicants and tenants, and just, of course, be a liaison for our tenants and applicants with our properties. So I was never able to be a referral agent, a certified 811 referral agent before, but I was a housing case manager in a past life. So I just want to give a special shout out to all of the housing advocates that are here today. I know a lot of y'all are probably working from home. So thank you for all the work that you do for our applicants and tenants. There's a little special spot in my heart for our housing case managers. So it's great to be able to serve you guys today.
Yeah. Thanks, Caitlyn. So I'm going to give a general background about our barrier busting fund, and then Caitlyn is going to, as she's going to be your point of contact, she's going to walk you through sort of the steps of how to make a request on this fund. So our barrier busting fund is funded through the Money Follows the Person program. So this is a federal program to support individuals with disabilities to live in the community instead of in institutions. And Money Follows the Person has funded for us what we're calling a risk mitigation fund. And it consists of this barrier busting fund, which is the focus for the call today. But it also includes what we're calling a damage fund. And that is a fund for properties to request reimbursement if they've done repairs on an 811 unit. And so we did send out some more information about that back in June. I'm happy to, if you have questions about that, feel free to communicate with me later. But today we are so excited to be talking about our barrier busting fund. So this is a way where if an 811 applicant has been rejected by one of our properties due to their tenant screening criteria, the applicant can request the barrier busting fund payment, which would be the amount of the contract rent on the unit that they were applying for. And this would be used in conjunction with their appeal of that rejection. And so Caitlyn will tell you about that more, but as we could see in the poll, and from what we see as far as when we're processing lease ups and doing this sort of thing, we do see that we have a lot of, we do have consistently some rejections that are happening, be it due to criminal background, landlord history, sometimes credit, or sometimes other issues. So we are very excited to be able to bring this to you. Many of you will be familiar with the idea of a barrier busting fund because there are similar funds operating in Texas in different areas and across the nation. Really, this is an emerging best practice as far as housing individuals who are very vulnerable or who might have these barriers to obtaining housing. Specifically, I'm thinking of ECHO, which is the continuum of care here in Austin. Travis County has a barrier busting fund. And so if you're familiar with those, I hope that experience is really useful as you think about using this new 811 PRA barrier busting fund. And so with that, I will hand it off to Caitlyn to kind of go step by step through the way that you can access this fund for 811 applicants.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just going to run you guys through what this would look like live, if you will. So your client or our applicant comes to the top of a wait list. They would be contacted by the property and go through the motions of applying to that property. Of course, there's going to be two scenarios. They're either going to be approved, which of course barrier busting funds would not be used unless they were rejected. So the next option would be if your client applies and they're rejected by the property, you can choose to appeal that, and that's where the barrier busting would come in. That would be, you have 14 days to appeal a denial of a property. And so you can also use a reasonable accommodation, but we're hoping that we can utilize the barrier busting. And so what that looks like for referral agents is, if you'll take a look at the screen, I'll show you on our website here. Okay, so at the very, so this is the Tdhca website for Section 811. Off on the left-hand side, we have a tab for referral agents. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. This is where we have all of our tools for you guys. And so we have it right here at the top since it's so brand new. And so it'll probably stick up here for a while, and then maybe eventually it'll move back down towards the bottom of the page. But the policy and procedures are all going to be right here. So if you don't get everything in now, you can always refer back to this PDF. This is going to have all the details of how barrier busting works and what the processes are. It's got my contact information in there as well, because what you'll do next is, okay, so once your applicant is rejected, we'll need a copy of that rejection notice, in addition to the form that you'll fill out for our purposes. So that's going to be that second link that's on our website. Pretty standard stuff. It's just going to be all the information about your client and your information as the referral agent. We ask that the request be submitted to us within 10 days of their rejection notice, because it is such a time crunch between rejection and the appeal time. 14 days, can sometimes be a lot. Can go by very quickly, especially if you're working with multiple clients. So we ask that you do get that to us really quickly so that we can get that processed. We don't want to lose the unit at the property either if the property manager decides to go forward with barrier busting. So barrier busting is going to be up to the contract rent. Of course, this will depend on the unit size, and the contract rent is the total amount for the unit, not necessarily what the tenant will be paying their portion, but the actual contract rent. So barrier busting will go up to the contract rent. We ask that you give the reason that they were denied. Fill this out, shoot me an email, and then upload this to our secure server. I think most of you guys have access. If not, it'll be someone at your agency that has access to the server. So it's those two forms. It's going to be the rejection from the property, and it's going to be our barrier busting form that you turn into us. From there, we'll review it. We'll make sure everything is accurate. It's within the time frame. And then once it receives the approval, of course, we'll notify you as soon as possible. Then you as the referral agent will present this to the property. This is going to be really crucial that you begin to build a relationship with the property manager and really be an advocate for your client and for our applicants, which I know you already are already. But we've learned that the closer that referral agents are with properties, the more success that we have with our tenants once they're housed. And just creating those relationships is so crucial sometimes. So all goes well, you're approved for barrier bust, or the tenant or the applicant is approved for barrier busting. They're approved, they move in, and then the payment will be made to the property after they have moved in. If they're still denied, if the property decides not to move forward with the barrier busting funds, then the applicant will stay rejected from that property, but then they can wait to be come up to the top of wait lists for other 811 properties. So hopefully that sums everything up. I know I talked very quickly, but I think now we'll open it up to a Q&A if anyone has any questions, and we are happy to answer those. Let me know if I missed anything, Monica.
Great job, Caitlin. Yeah, please, we encourage you to put a question into the question box, or also if you raise your hand, we can unmute you and we can take it from there with your question. Okay, I am going to unmute Candace Tobar to ask a question. And Candace, it looks like you are self-muted, so you will also want to unmute yourself so that you can, I think we can hear you now, Candace.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the only two forms is the copy of the rejection notice and the barrier busting form. Just those two.
Just those two. Yes. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I know it seems like it would be more paperwork, but yeah, we just need that. We need proof from the property that they were in fact rejected. And then just that form that has your information on there. I didn't mention this, but I know a lot of people might be working from home. It does ask for signatures, but you can just put a digital signature and that works as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so is it 10 days to return or 14 days? Or is it 10 to 14 days?
It's 10 days for us, but you have 14 days from the rejection letter from the property to appeal. So it's 10 days for us so that we can get it in before those 14 days are over.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and we do want to highlight too that, you know, under our program, it is required that if an applicant is rejected from a property, that they receive that written notice. If you ever have concern that, you know, that the applicant didn't receive it or it was lost or something like that, please reach out to us. We often also, we should receive the copy of that notice. So sometimes I'm able to provide those to you very quickly over email, like the digital version of that letter. So we want to make ourselves available in that way to you also.
Okay, and also, so I've had a few denials a while back, and a lot of the properties didn't know about the 811 program. So they said they have some units for 811 and the rest for other programs or just like regular, open for regular, anybody. And so do these properties know about this barrier busting funds and the forms that need to be submitted and all of that?
So yeah, as we're rolling this fund out to this network of referral agents, we're also going to be informing our properties about it. Okay. They have been trained generally on the 811 program, and they should know around the requirements around rejecting applicants and that 14-day appeal period, and they should have a process for the way they receive and process appeals. So we are sort of adding the barrier busting into that section. So yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna unmute Yvette Sutton, who has a question here. Let's see. And Yvette, it looks like you are self-muted. You can speak now. Yeah.
When if a property agrees to accept the barrier busting funding, which agency will actually make the payment? Is it our agency or is it Tdhca?
Mm-hmm. Tdhca will make the payment to the property after that person has moved in and we see a lease and we know that they're moved in.
Okay, so we're still part, as a referral agent, we would still be part of all of that, getting that paperwork to you and so forth, so until the end of the process, correct?
Yeah, essentially, as you're helping that applicant file that appeal and showing that that applicant's been approved for the payments, and that kind of role of working with the property manager to hope that they would accept that payment.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. And I'm calling on Evan Sandler. Let's see here. Evan, can you ask your question there? Let's see. I think we should be able to hear you. And this is Evan Sadler at Integral Care. Let's see. Okay, Evan, maybe you can put your question in the question box and we will definitely circle back to it there. And I'm gonna call on Shanika Frazier from Tarrant. You are now unmuted, Shanika.
Yes, my question was about the documentation, so that's already been answered.
Excellent. Okay, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Too.
Caitlin, do you see any written questions that we should get started on there?
Yes. Yeah, trying to navigate that while we're doing the other one. Sorry, y'all, we're new to this. Okay, so the first one of them is, how long will the barrier busting fund assist the client? From Jolinda. Hi, Jolinda. How long will the barrier busting fund assist the client? Well, I'm assuming you mean for the course of their tenancy. So I might be interpreting your question wrong, but so the barrier busting fund would be used just once. It would be to appeal someone's rejection. So it would only, it would only be used once. So it's not necessarily the length of it. They wouldn't have to reapply for it if they were approved and had to renew their lease the following year. But I might be interpreting your question wrong. So hopefully that answered it. I'm not sure if you're referring to how long barrier busting fund is available for our program. I don't know if you addressed that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think maybe if we do like a scenario. So say we had a one-person household who was applied and rejected for a unit where the contract rent was going to be $950. If they appealed with the barrier busting fund and then were to get approved and moved in, Tdhca makes a one-time payment of $950 to the property. And then that tenant has a regular Section 811, the HUD model lease, and they are just as if, they've been approved to move in that way. Yeah, great.
Okay, and then we have another question. It's very small, so I'm sorry I can't see your name on here, but it says, is that 14 business days or 14 whole days? That's going to be in reference to the appeal process for a property. As far as I know, it's 14 business days to appeal.
Yeah. Let's double check back on that, and we'll get that information out when we also send out the video for the webinar, because that is in reference to that comes from HUD rules. So let's just double check on that around business or calendar days.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so it says, Does it matter the reason for the rejection? No, it could be for criminal, credit, rental history. Those are really the main three. Sometimes there's an other, but it's so uncommon. So yeah, it doesn't matter the reason for the rejection. Just they're all barriers. So no, it does not matter.
Mm-hmm. And I will clarify on that one. We did in the paperwork there, you're going to see that this cannot be used to overcome any reasons why someone might be rejected from the program at large. So, there are, we have certain age, income, and certain criminal background requirements that are mandated by HUD. And so you cannot use the barrier busting fund to overcome those. We are specifically talking about property level rejections. And I'll circle back to the 14-day question. We did just clarify that it is, when we're talking about 14 days for the appeal at a property, it is 14 calendar days. So thank you for that question. And we can also send that information out afterwards.
Okay. Let's see. Lindsay Box from Integral, hi Lindsay, has asked what would result in a denial of barrier busting funds. Unfortunately, it's not a guarantee that the properties are going to accept the funds. This is just kind of, our way of trying to get someone into housing. So unfortunately, it would just be, they would be denied at that property. Of course, after you've gone through the appeal process. They would continue to stay on any wait list that they've still selected through 811, and then they would just, be called by additional properties that they're waiting for once they come to the top of those wait lists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's something to try out for sure. Okay.
Okay, hang on. This one's kind of a long one. It's in a very small box, and they're testing us. Okay, so is the funding for only 1 month? This assumes they will then be accepted. What happens if they're still denied? Okay, yes, yeah. The funding is only a one-time payment. And then, yeah, I think I just answered this one from before. So assumes they'll be accepted. If they're denied, unfortunately, it's just move on to the next property, and hopefully the next one would work. So.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take Candace's question here. So if an applicant's denied from one apartment and applies at another and gets denied again, will the funds be able to assist again to appeal? The answer is yes. Essentially, these funds would be available to an applicant one time, but if it doesn't work out at one property, so long as we still have this funding, and of course we will let you know if it does expire at the end of the year or not. We're hoping it continues, but so long as we still have barrier busting funds available, that applicant is free to apply for the barrier busting funds again. So long as we approve them, they are free to work with that next property on their appeal and see if they have success that second time around. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. As far as I can tell, I think that's it in the. Oh, nope.
We do have some more here. This is great. These are questions, everyone. So Cecil from Center for Healthcare Services in San Antonio is asking whether these funds can be used to get an ID, a birth certificate, or a criminal record. So unfortunately, no, they cannot. These funds are pretty limited, and as we talked about, as far as Tdhca making a payment to an 811 property who has moved in, someone who had already been approved for these funds. Cecil, you might be speaking to some other funding through HHSC that is sometimes available to get those types of resources. And I believe that we do have Kevin James from HHSC on the call. So let me in fact see if we can have Kevin James briefly introduce himself, and perhaps if he has anything more to say about this, he can do so. Kevin, are you there?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I almost said good afternoon. I'm rushing this Friday, but good morning, everybody. As Monica introduced, I am Kevin James. I believe we sent out an email last week or the week before introducing myself and kind of outlining my role at Health and Human Services Commission, as well as my role with Section 811. And just to answer the question as it relates to Cecil, there were recently some funds for vital health documents for our Section 811 participants through Money Follows the Person. However, those funds did end on June 30th of this year. So currently we do not have access to those funds for that service. But feel free to also reach out to me. That way we can figure out how we can use some existing housing funds in your systems by updating maybe some statements of works as it relates to maybe supportive housing rental assistance programs. We also have our Hcc program, and from some brief conversations with Tdhca and myself, there's been communication seeking information about Hcc and SHRA. So if you have any questions about who I am, what my role is at HHSC, and then what are those housing programs and HHSC's Adult Mental Health Services Unit, reach out to me. My contact information is in that email, or reach out to someone at Tdhca. That way they can forward you that email, because all of my information is there. But yeah, let's figure out how we can explore to best serve the individuals in our communities. And I also have received some waitlist questions, so I just want to make sure our roles are clear here, where Tdhca is the main Section 811 provider, and myself at HHSC, sort of my role is to assist and be that liaison between Tdhca and the LMHAs that HHSC has oversight over. So I'm definitely someone that's there as a resource, whereas Tdhca is like the main players in the game when it comes to Section 811. But if you have any questions, like I say, just reach out to me and we can explore from there, or I can try to see who has the information that you're seeking.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, that is wonderful. And just, yeah, like Kevin said, Caitlyn and I kind of remain your main points of contact as far as updating your applications, application submission, questions about referrals to properties, questions about tenants, that sort of thing. But we're so excited to have Kevin on board as a partner with 811, and we've already seen him giving us a lot of great support around how can we better support you all, especially at the LMHAs too. Yeah. Okay, so I'll take Criselda's question here. Criselda Morales from Tropical Texas Behavioral down in the Valley. Hello. You're asking whether, as a referral agent, is it our responsibility to educate the applicant on the barrier busting fund if they are denied by a property, I assume, or is the applicant going to be informed by the property if denied about the fund? So this is a great question, and this is why we're on the call today. It will mostly be your role to inform the applicant about this possibility. So any applicant who gets rejected by a property, they will receive that rejection notice, which should clarify that they have 14 days to make an appeal. But that notice and that property manager is not going to be promoting this fund or probably not even, talking about it with the applicant. So we would definitely encourage you as the referral agent to let them know that this is a possibility. And I would essentially, I would imagine if you're helping an applicant with an appeal, that you would want to request these funds. I don't really see any reason why you wouldn't. So we're happy to support you on that. And as far as at the agency level, if this is coming up in such a way that you might think about creating a policy around, when someone's rejected, what do we talk about with them? That would be a really good idea as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can take this next one from Lindsay. Can Tdhca deny an application for barrier busting funds? We can. It would probably be if for other reasons, such as if it doesn't meet the time frame, if it's not a legitimate 811 applicant. Those would really be the only reasons I can think of, as long as if it's not coordinating with the appeal process, would be really the reason for that. Like the barrier busting funds, it's kind of a time crunch process because it has to be done within this appeal period. So if it's something outside of the appeal period, or if it's something not related to screening criteria, things like that, then that would be a reason to deny. But we want to get your people housed as badly as you do. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Let's see.
Caitlyn Lepercio, I believe at Blue Bonnet, around the outer Austin area. Caitlyn was again asking whether an applicant can use this process more than once. So for example, if they get rejected by apartment 1, 2, and 3, do we have to wait to send another rejection form to y'all? And the answer is going to be yes. We will essentially need to go through this entire process if we are to approve a barrier busting fund payment. Some of you may have noticed that some of our leasing has slowed a bit, especially, if you were to compare it to this time last year. I believe we were doing a lot more move-ins. There's a number of reasons for that. We are still, we're still doing move-ins, but the level or the volume has slowed some. So we're not having as many applicants who are likely applying to multiple properties all at once. Though if they are rejected from multiple properties all at once within a 10-day period or whatever it is, yes, you can submit multiple requests for barrier busting funds for each rejection, but understanding that applicant can only move into one property. So any applicant who's considering multiple 811 properties, if they're lucky enough to have that on a similar time frame, that is typically they can only choose one property that they'll be able to move into and get the project rental assistance. So they would likewise be choosing which property would be receiving that barrier busting fund payment. And of course, depending on whether that property is going to accept the payment, grant the appeal, and all that. Yeah, so good question. Mm-hmm. Follow-up question from Caitlyn around when will Section 811 waitlists open next? At this time, we have 5 waitlists that are 5 counties waitlists that are closed. So those counties, as you'll see on our website, include Travis, Bexar, Dallas, Nueces, and Harris County. They are all closed at this time. So that means no new applications. We had to close these waiting lists due to excessive wait times, which of course you're all familiar with. We do not have a date at this time as far as when we're going to open them. We will not open them until we determine that there will not be excessive wait times. So, of course, you'll be notified if and when they do open. Mm-hmm.
I'll grab the next one, and I apologize, I can't see who asked it, but they asked to give concrete examples of how these funds can be used. Is it for things like double deposit because of criminal background? Yeah, so great question. A great example would be if your tenant has, or I'm sorry, if the applicant has, let's say they have an eviction on their record from 3 years ago, and the property that they are applying to has the evictions have to be 5 years old before they can be approved. So they don't meet the eviction requirements or the rental history requirements, but the property is willing to accept the barrier busting funds to essentially override that or appeal that. It's not really an override, it's more of an appeal. Then the barrier busting funds would be used as an incentive payment. It's not a double deposit. I know in my past case managing days, we would do high risk fees, we would do double deposits, sometimes we would do triple deposits. So this is not a deposit, it's just an incentive payment to the property to appeal the denial due to poor rental history. Or it could be bad credit or criminal. A lot of properties have certain years that or look back periods, I should say. So this would be kind of a way to make that look back period a little bit shorter. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and I would clarify too that if someone gets approved by a property, like we said, they're still signing that HUD model lease. So they will still need to pay a security deposit. And as you remember in our program, if they are very low or no income, the minimum security deposit in our program is $50. But the security deposit could go up to more or less 30% of that household's monthly income. So that's another thing, and we always want to encourage our applicants to be saving up for that amount. And this barrier busting fund does not change anything about that security deposit for them. Yeah. So we have Caitlyn Lepercio has her hand raised. So Caitlyn, you had written some questions too, so I'll unmute you so that we can see if we have answered all your questions.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So when I raised my hand, it was just for those two questions. I am in Bexar County. I'm actually at Center for Healthcare Services along with Cecil.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I confused you with another Caitlyn.
That's okay. We have a lot of Caitlyns in Texas. So that was just my main questions about the 811 wait list, because it has been closed for a little while, and we have a lot of applicants who do have the criminal background, and so they're having a hard time right now. Like Cecil said, getting an ID, and then of course finding a place to live post incarceration. And then you entered the other one about do we have to wait 10 days in between the processes? I am asking my case managers right now if they have any additional questions, so I might raise my hand or type more as like the case managers start coming in. But you guys answered the initial two, so thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I gave an example before. So our last question said that it's hard to visualize how to utilize these funds without some examples of how to. Hopefully, my last one did answer that. But let me know. You feel free to email me as well, or call me if you want more information. So yeah, I am available. Okay, do we have any more questions?
I think we just want to kind of frame this as we're kind of adding another tool in your toolbox when you have an applicant who is rejected I know we've kind of talked at length about appeals, which, a standard appeal would probably include some rationale around some persuasiveness or perhaps letters of reference to explain why this person should be approved for the apartment. We have talked a little less about reasonable accommodations, and so we wanted to let you know we're going to be pretty soon sharing some more information around the reasonable accommodation process and what that looks like. But if essentially, if the person, the reason why they've been rejected from the property, whatever it is that's showing up on their background or on their credit score or something like that, if it is directly tied to their disability, and you can show that nexus, and that you can show that there's reason to believe that that behavior or that action is not likely to recur, that's when you would consider using a reasonable accommodation request to the property in response to, or even proactively before applying to a property. So we will be sharing some more information about that process also.
Okay, we got another question in here. Is there a maximum amount for the fund that Tdhca will pay for the applicant, or is it case by case? The maximum amount for barrier busting is going to be the contract rent for the unit that the applicant is applying for. This varies by property, and this varies by the size of the unit. So, of course, a 4-bedroom or 3-bedroom unit is going to be more expensive than a 1-bedroom unit. So it could be up to $1,000. It could be as low as $800. So it's going to be the contract rent. And the contract rent is going to be before the applicant knows the portion of what they'll be paying. So it's the actual price of the unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say too, if that's one of the required lines on the form. If you are not aware what the contract rent was supposed to be on that unit, go ahead and still send that request over to us. We should be able to figure that out. But I know oftentimes applicants would and likely are aware of that as they're going through the application process. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Caitlyn is asking, does the barrier busting fund help for 1 month, correct? Yeah, so I guess it depends on how you think about this, but the payment is equivalent to 1 month's contract rent on that unit. That's how we determine, how much the payment is going to be for. But again, I just want to reiterate, it's not paying rent for the tenant. This is an incentive payment for the property to approve that appeal and approve that applicant to sign that regular lease that we use for our HUD tenants, the HUD model lease. So they would still be, on the lease as paying their security deposit and paying their tenant portion of rent each month. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so
I think that's it.
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised. Just double checking that we've responded to of the written questions here. But we do want to respect your time, so we'll give you guys just 1 or 2 minutes here. Okay, I do have one person with a hand raised, and this is Josefa Zeterain Florney. Josefa, I have you unmuted now and you can speak.
Good morning, guys. Thanks again for all the information. I guess this question goes back a little bit with logistics. Earlier, you mentioned that that the referral agent would present the barrier busting opportunity or benefit to the property management, and if it was approved, the tenant then moves in and the barrier busting dollars are paid to the property. So this question is more along the lines of kind of logistics. So I was wondering, does that mean that you all would have already done the necessary paperwork for that payment to be immediately available? Is there, maybe some expected or anticipated possibility that it may be a few days before the payment happens in the event that the property wants to see the payment first or made at the same time that the deposit is made? And so what might be the turnaround time in terms of, maybe asking the tenant or the applicant, to put off the move-in logistics, kind of along those lines. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's a good question. So we are limited in that we can only make the payment once that tenant has moved in. So we do not want this to slow down the move-in. The property they're essentially needing to trust that we're going to make that payment just as soon as we can after we have basically the lease from them. We need to know that tenant is unit. We make the payment afterward. We get the 10-day deadline, but we really envision this process in an ideal situation would happen immediately. And part of the reason, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this too, is even if you were to get an appeal approved, sometimes that unit has already been filled. So if we are talking about 2 weeks, often properties are looking to fill units very quickly. So we would encourage you, if you or the applicant is going forward with the barrier busting, you would move forward pretty quickly. And I feel like I missed part of I missed part of your question.
If you can still hear me, I think basically what it was the possibility that apartment complex, would not allow that tenant to move in unless there was, some assurance that maybe payment was going to be made via credit card within 24 to 48 hours of handing the key over, or that Tdhca, had the sufficient documentation required by, say, maybe procurement to be able to make this payment within this very, very short but reasonable period of time. Because I think that property managers oftentimes are like, no, we want to see it now. And so, but I think that this might also speak to the question that was presented earlier, where like who discusses this program with the properties, and as you mentioned, just like you are, having this session with the referral agents, that you would have similar sessions with property management, but yet and still some property managers, aren't, may not necessarily be fully aware, or if there's changes in property management that maybe not everybody's on board. So, I mean, that's a concern because this is a very delicate and vulnerable population, and all the work that goes into being able to place somebody, we really would like to know that it's not going to fall apart because some property manager just doesn't want to wait, 7 to 10 days for a payment.
No, it's definitely a valid concern. Caitlin, I don't know if you want to pull up the form if you're able to, and this will probably, sorry guys, this will probably be our last question just due to time. But the form itself, this is the assurance to the property that Tdhca will be making the payment. We're going to have our signature on there, and we're happy to do any hand holding with the properties for these, as we launch this as a new program and get them accustomed to it. So they will have that form, you know, and we are making payments to our properties monthly. And so we expect that they will trust when we make that payment that we're going to be able to do so timely, and that they will be able to receive that payment. We already are paying rent each month, so we have all the information to do so. So, but I also hear the concern, and we'll kind of note that down and keep that on our minds too. Yeah. Okay. Okay, just due to time, we're gonna go ahead and close out the webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and for your questions. Like I said, we'll be using all your questions to kind of inform our materials and try to support you better as this moves forward. As you sign off the webinar, you're gonna be asked a few evaluation questions. Please answer those, just because it does help us in communicating with you in the future. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day. All right.